JoEllen McCarthy, and I'm a lifelong learner and educator who believes in the power of read-alouds. I'm also the proud author of Layers of Learning, where I share my thinking around the ways we can use picture books to connect literacy and caring conversations. Together, let's connect our students to the stories, the people, and the possibilities for learning on and off the pages of their books. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of Behind the Book. I am JoEllen McCarthy, and I am so pleased to have with me today the author of one of my all-time favorite mentor texts and book as co-teacher, Always Anjali, written by the lovely and talented Sheetal Sheth. Welcome, Sheetal. I'm so happy to have you, and thank you for the gifts you've given us in this wonderful character and her stories and how we get to learn from her lessons that really will support our caring conversations.
Oh, thank you. It is a joy. It's so nice to see you. I love how much you love this book.
For those of us who are viewing at home and don't know the story of Anjali, would you be so kind as to give us a quick little book talk?
Yes, of course. So Anjali it's her birthday. She can't wait. She's so excited to finally get a bike of her own, and her best friends are riding their bikes to the carnival, and they all want to get matching license plates to put on their backs of the bikes. And she's the only one that can't find her name. And in that moment, as sad as she is, and as she gets bullied on top of it and gets made fun of. And to make matters worse, the actual cashier at the booth throws her a license plate with Angela on it, like a close enough name. And as I'm telling the story, I think anybody there's so many people that kind of can relate to all of these moments. So she goes home and tells her parents she's changing her name. She demands to change it. She hates her name. She's so upset. She's crying. She goes into her room. Her mom comes in, and her mom explains to her the story of her name and why she was named what she was, where it comes from, why it's meaningful. You're like not sure if Anjali really cares or gets it. And then she kind of goes to sleep, wakes up in the middle of the night with a little kind of inspiration. You see her working. She goes to school, and something I purposely put in, I wanted to show female friendship because I don't think we see enough of it. So you see that her two friends, Mary and Courtney, had actually come and brought her a license plate just like theirs that they had made for her. But she had made one on her own, and it was completely different from everybody else's. And something I talk about in school is when we get to that part, I always say, describe the one that everybody has. And they always say, well, it's the same, everybody has the same thing, it's plain. And then I said, okay, now describe Anjali's. And Anjali's is obviously very colorful and distinct and reflects who she is. And everyone's like, oh yeah, nobody else has that. And the point is to get that being yourself is the most important thing. And then after this moment, she kind of has a run-in with the same bully, who again starts to make fun of her, mispronounces her name on purpose, and she's able to stand up to him, walk away, and leaves, kind of like peacing out, saying, realizing that not being one of the crowd is actually, what she wants to be, and she vows to always be Anjali. It's taken on extra meaning actually in this past year with the kind of political climate. And I've heard from so many teachers and people, educators, parents that have been using the book as a resource, which only makes me happier. And I'm so glad we're able to have the conversations we need to, and have the book help with that. As you know, and several people know, what happened with Senator Perdue deliberately mispronouncing Kamala's name during the campaign, that moment, which again is outrageous that a sitting senator would do that on purpose, has brought up these conversations. There was actually a thread that went around, my name is, because people were, kind of doing the counter to what he was doing. And so this book has taken on new meaning, and I'm really happy, as we talked about, that it can.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because I think you and I even engaged in a conversation through
Mhm.
Twitter where I
Yep,
brought up your book and several other titles to help have these conversations in the classroom and connecting it to, real relevant world issues. And just, the messages in this book about self-acceptance and celebrating names and identities are so important and so essential to be having in the classroom. And then when we see, the craziness of what's going on in our world, more so, I always say we can only control what we can control in our classrooms. And so this is essential work that we're doing, and books like yours are gifts for teachers because we have the opportunity to engage in these conversations and have an entry point through a story that really makes it accessible for young children. So I thank you for that.
No, and I also think, it's not limited to us and to our children,
Right.
because it's an adult problem as well. And I have met so many teachers that don't realize that when they don't take the time to learn a child's name, or they give them a nickname that they never asked for, how that makes someone feel. And it stays with them. There were studies done about what it means when you've never been called your given name and you didn't ask for the nickname, and so it's really important we get it right.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that that is something that's so essential. And I think the opportunities to connect conversations and also activities, not in a sense of being, an activity in the sense of being something that will help extend the conversations
Mhm.
with this book. Like, I love the fact that Anjali does create her own name tag, which personalizes, and I shared the picture, shows, her celebration of her name, but also her unique interpretation and just, the way in which she uses the colors and the imagery and all of that. And I think that that's so powerful. And I think it's another message that, we all have different strengths and talents, and we should be celebrating all of those at all times. And
Absolutely.
the layer that you added in there with, Zachary the bully, I think it's really important for kids to see how she was empowered and she stood up to him and how she grew from that experience. And I think that's another powerful message that comes from this story.
Most of my writing, and I have a number of books, I know we're going to talk about Bravo Anjali, but I have other books that are also in process, come from real life stories. And so whether they be mine or friends of mine or combinations of little things or my kids, they're all real stuff. And, the reason why I even started writing was the lack of kind of the representation of the world as we're living it in literature. Especially, I couldn't believe how hard it was to find books that reflected people of color in children's literature. There are still more books about animals than there are people of color in kidlit, and it's a huge problem. And so most of my stories, including Always Anjali, are all based on personal stuff.
I love that. You reminding me of the graphic that was done so well that shows that for people who haven't seen that, who are not in this work to the degree that we are, to see that for the first time, I think is very eye-opening. And I think it's essential that we are having conversations about books and representation, or even misrepresentation, because
Yeah.
oftentimes the books that do have characters represented in various backgrounds are, it's something that we have to look at with a critical lens with
Right.
our students.
They're
So
dated, and it's time to just, and it's okay. It's okay to say it is what it was, and there are better ones now. So let's replace them. It's almost like if you had a refrigerator that wasn't working anymore and didn't work, like, wouldn't you get a new one, And so we have to be able to do that. There's so much better stuff out there. And I think that's part of it. We can write and write and write, but if we're not giving the same access and opportunities and making sure they're in the classrooms, like, it seems like there's a certain number of books that everyone feels like they have to have, but even those can be critically looked at, and that needs to come from across every kind of teacher, educator, schools, all these institutions. They need to reach out to smaller independent presses more, and really make sure that they're being inclusive in the books that they're having. And I think the problem is there's these kind of structures in place, as we see in several industries, that need to be kind of, just broken down a little bit and restructured.
the really exciting news that Anjali is part of a series now.
Yes.
And the new book, which you've kind of hinted at, we both hinted at, is called Bravo, Anjali.
Yes, I'll hold it up for you.
Yay! I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I was fortunate enough to have a preview and to read the text. One of the questions I was going to ask is, like, how does your activism work with you as an author? And I think you sort of answered that already in giving us stories that help us have these conversations, invite these conversations, and give us the opportunity to, really go deeper beyond the pages of a book. And so I thank you for that. I know that you also were talking about, we spoke about, like your real life experiences and thinking about how you as an author, have brought your passion. So do you want to do another quick little book talk just to give?
Well, so this book came out of, first of all, I cannot believe that this is the only illustrated book series in existence that features a South Asian hero. Like, I didn't even know that was true. And then that was said to me. I was like, oh my God, that's unbelievable, actually. And let me make sure. And it's true. And so that's a problem. Secondly, yes, I was thinking, I knew I wanted her to kind of have many stories. And so this story came out of what was, again, real life happening around me and the world at large. And the Me Too movement was in its prime. And I was thinking about how much I see this gender bias in young kids with boys and girls. Even in the way we talk about books, when people would say to me, can you write a book for boys? And I'm like, this book is for boys. I'm like, there's no such thing as boy books and girl books. And in fact, I would argue that it's even more important for girls to read, for boys to read books with girls at the center of the stories than the other, because they need to see the world that way. That being said, so I was thinking about what that would feel like to kids. What would Me Too be in kids? And I've also thought about how many people, especially women, have not lived to their biggest potential because they feel like they have to kind of dim their light or not be their greatest selves because of whatever reason. And so I started thinking about it, and another kind of secret, which some people may figure out or not, is every book. So at the end of Always Anjali, there's a picture of Anjali playing the tabla. And that was on purpose. That's like a little Easter egg. So at the end of every book, there's an Easter egg of what's to come. And also the titles, it's going to go like alphabetical. So there's the Always A, and then there's Bravo B. The third one, there's a C that goes with. So it's like, I don't know if I'll get to Z, but there's I want people to be able to have the tools to have these conversations because it's happening. And I think this is an important conversation to have with boys and girls on both sides.
I couldn't agree with you more. And what I love that you did in both books is, you have characters come to different realizations, which is so important for kids to see the change in a story and when, how different events and situations impact people in different ways. And I think that's so important. And as you said, just seeing a way to have conversations around Me Too movement and just being able to think about, all of the microaggressions that happen in the story.
Yes.
During her musical,
Yes.
classes. Like, I think that is something that is so global and tremendous and can, go across different categories, not just in terms of talent here, but what, kids experience, females, males, based on, race, identity, so on and so forth. And that's, I think, one of the most essential conversations we can have, in my opinion.
I think you talking about microaggressions is like amazing because you've read the text. You're one of the first to read it. And there are so many of them put in there. And, even if you get one out however many are in there, that's great, but they're all they're all in there for a reason. And I've layered them with, again, true life stories from people. And by the way, I talked to boys and girls that were in industries where they were not the dominant gender, to kind of hear experiences on both sides. One thing I think is important, and I've thought about, like, when we get to the world of author visits again, I was thinking about what would I do, with Bravo Anjali. With Always Anjali, we have a bunch of things that we do. With Bravo Anjali, I was thinking about what it would be. And I thought, as I talk to kids, even young kids, it's this weird thing of not feeling able to say something good about themselves. And so what I would want to do is give everyone permission and encouragement, and I would want them to come to the front of the class and tell everybody something they're great at and own it, and I find that kids even get shy about that. And I don't know where it's conditioning from and how young, but even my kids are like shy about it. And I'm like, there's a balance to be found in owning your greatness and obviously not going to the other side where you're just obnoxious, but kids should feel proud of being good at something. And so I think with Bravo, Anjali, that would be something I would do. You know, we would read this. And again, when we talk about never dimming your light and everyone being proud of something that they're good at, I would want kids to come up and share a story or something that they want to tell everybody that they're really good at, that they're working on.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And I think that's like the perfect way to kind of wrap up our conversation. Thanks to you for, offering your time and your talents and sharing your story with us. And thank you for sharing your stories between Always Anjali and Bravo. And I'm so intrigued to see what the next one is after that. I love now knowing that inside secret about the pattern.
Yes.
Using the alphabet. So
thank you.
You out.
Bye-bye.
The following literacy snapshots demonstrate ways to extend these conversations. Here, learners explore books to reflect on the ways in which characters, events, or images may perpetuate or dispel stereotypes.
For Gobble, the protagonist of this book, he's really working through being this quieter person who is now in this new situation and has to figure out how to make friends and socialize. And I think it doesn't serve kids when we don't talk about the way their personal traits kind of interact with those broader stereotypes that are out there that we want to dispel.